Firewall implementation, learning objectives, and key concepts. Learning objectives describe the fundamental functions performed by firewalls, common firewall technologies, and the elements of firewall implementation and configuration. Follow the implementation of a firewall. Key concepts: preserving privacy, constructing, configuring, and managing a firewall, installing and configuring a PF6 firewall, testing and troubleshooting firewalls. What to protect and why. Network security. Remember, it's a defense in depth process. We want to protect computers, hard disks, databases, and more. And firewalls are an important part of that defense in depth strategy. Transaction security. Protect transactions on web servers and with databases. HTTPS encrypts transactions over the internet. Firewalls provide data protection. Overlapping types of network security and transaction security risk. Unauthorized individuals can breach the server's document tree. Information about the server can be accessed. Transaction data can be intercepted, and denial of service attacks can occur. Protecting information and resources. Servers may host massive amounts of data that are invaluable to attackers. Database servers may host a PII, or personally identifiable information about customers, including payment card data. DNS servers host IP addresses and names of network systems. Protecting clients and users. Treat private messages as confidential, maintain the integrity of information, use strong authentication and non-repudiation methods for all transactions. Preserving privacy. EPIC, also known as Electronic Privacy Information Center, has a goal to alert the public to emerging privacy issues relating to national information infrastructure, digital telephony proposal, medical record privacy, and the sale of consumer data. EPIC's mission is to preserve the right of privacy in the electronic age, give individuals greater control over personal information, and encourage the development of new technologies that protect rights. The California Consumer Privacy Act requires companies to protect the consumer information they hold, implement and maintain reasonable security procedures and practices, secure sensitive information in database behind a firewall, and restrict access to the database. This act stipulates minimum damages for class action suits in response for data breaches. Proper firewall implementation procedure. Clearly define the requirements for the firewall. Specify capabilities, features, and requirement to accomplish task and security goals. Specify the network design that the firewall will complement. Network firewalls must be at checkpoints or transition points. Write the plan down. Document every action requirement from the moment the firewall arrives to the point of enabling filtering of production traffic. Include photos in the documentation. Include configuration screens, physical setup, cable attachment, and labeling. Write down every aspect of the firewall use before a deployment. Document every step performed from the start to finish of a deployment. Record actions in managing, administrating, monitoring, and troubleshooting the firewall for the remainder of its deployment life. Determine the firewall configurations and strategies. Is it a simple firewall? You're trying to protect a simple network. Multi-home firewall used for a perimeter network. You're trying to have multiple interfaces that you're trying to protect, multiple networks. You use that. 2 firewalls used to create a DMZ or demilitarized zone. Here's an example of a simple firewall solution. We have the internet, and our boundary border firewall protects the internal network and a web server. As you can see, this is a very simplistic design, maybe a small company, mom and pop shop, something like that, or even your home. Multi-home firewall used for a perimeter network. As you can see, we have the internet to our left, we have the firewall, and each leg inbound is an interface or a network that you're trying to preserve or protect. So we have an interface that goes off to a web server, You have another, and that would be kind of like a DMZ, but not necessarily. And then we're trying to protect our internal users and internal network, and that would be a separate interface. This would be an example of a multi-homed firewall. Two firewalls used to create a DMZ. Now in our last multi-home, you can have a DMZ there, so you really don't have to have two firewalls, but two firewalls do add another layer of protection where you can filter basic noise at the first border firewall, create a DMZ. That's usually a DMZ is where you have your public-facing servers that are accessed by the public, web servers, database servers, anything like that, transaction servers. Then you have another firewall to protect the internal network, and you're going to write rules that only allow internet traffic through and our internal users to go out to the web server to manage it. Constructing, configuring, and managing firewall. In this application, we're trying to protect a SOHO, or a small office home office, with VPN hardware firewalls. In this consideration, if you have fewer than 25 computers or devices on the network, use secure VPN connections to the company network to transfer email and sensitive files. Additional features, we could implement antivirus, IP filtering, web content filtering, router options, intrusion detection, and denial of service or distributed denial of service attack detection. Best solution if you already have a working network and need to provide remote access to it. pfSense. pfSense is a host software solution. It's well known and widely installed, supports different network types, practical solution for most organizations, and some of the key features are can support a web proxy, Snort, which is an intrusion detection system, remote access and VPN support, geo IP blocking, that's where you'd want to block maybe a whole country like China or Russia or any other nefarious actors, IDS IPS solution, load balancing, traffic shaping, transparent caching proxy, web content filter, so you want to block YouTube and Facebook chat and any other application, or you want to block, let's say, violence, sex, drugs, guns. You would use a web content filter to do that. Multiple IP addresses per interface, built on a stable, well-supported platform with an operating system called FreeBSD. And here are the minimum requirements for a pfSense install. 64-bit Intel or AMD processor, must be able to boot from USB optical drive or a memory stick. 2 network interfaces. Planning a firewall implementation with pfSense. The benefits of using standard hardware is the flexibility, performance and value for money, and support, because you can use a household computer or a small server that could host the pfSense. Or you could even have a small box. As you can see from the previous requirements, doesn't take a lot to run this firewall. What would be useful for pfSense? Small organizations, users access to the internet daily, no web server or VPN server. The solution would be a proxy server or a firewall such as pfSense would be sufficient. Medium to large organizations, users access the internet daily. You have a web server with a high volume of access from customers, VPN server for mobile/remote users. The solution would be a DMZ with 2 application level firewalls, and packet filtering would be adequate. Subnet architecture. Multiple subnets want to limit specific types of traffic within subnets. Solution would be configure routers for basic packet filtering. Installing the pfSense firewall application. Install on a local firewall or on a large-scale security device or in the cloud. Download pfSense at the URL. Select the version, architect, hardware, and installer type. Choose installer options for the ISO image, an optical disk, USB, or memory stick. Verify the hash value. Save the downloaded file to media. Accept the copyright notice when prompted. Select install and select the file system. pfSense partitioning options during the installation. As you can see from the screenshot, you have multiple options on how to partition the install. Continuing on, select the key map selection. After installation begins, select manual confirmation options or no when prompted. Remove the disk with the original download of pfSense. After reboot, assign interfaces using the system console. Assign the VLAN if used. In this screenshot, you can see the options for the key map options during the installation process. Configuring a firewall with pfSense. All incoming wide area network connections are blocked by default. All outgoing local area networks connections are allowed by default. Wide area network is configured with both IPv4 and IPv6 DHCP client. pfSense will function as a DHCP server by default on IPv4 and IPv6. Some elements of the firewall deployment you might want to consider is turning these options on. Using a captive portal, DHCP server, DNS server, NTP server, SNMP daemons, IGMP proxy daemon, IDS-IPS deployment, and virtualization. Testing and troubleshooting your firewall. Create a comprehensive testing plan before installing the firewall. Document the results of the test and label the test data. Use test data that mimics live data on the network. Check for connectivity. Testing aids in limiting packet and traffic loss. Use a collection of typical and atypical network traffic to test. Further troubleshooting. Hardware problems or issues with FreeBSD kernel, specifically kernel panics, could cause the pfSense firewall to reboot. Hard drive failure messages may include file system is full or no inodes free. Rule out hardware issues first. Check offloading options. Log each change made, the order in which the changes were made, the results of testing the change, and whether the change maintained or reversed the issue. Run the df-hi command from the shell to identify the cause of the issue and review logs. In summary, we've looked at preserving privacy, constructing, configuring, and managing a firewall, installing and configuring a pfSense firewall, and testing and troubleshooting firewalls.